Hello, this is Tom from RV Travel and Living. I'm in the house. It's too noisy outside again. I wonder what's going on with the noise, right? Today we're going to talk about driving. How hard is it to drive an RV, a camper, a fifth wheel? You know, it takes a lot of practice, but we're going to talk about that today briefly. This is our new channel. You know, driving in your RV, or you're hauling a camper or a toy hauler or anything, a fifth wheel, can be challenging, I have to say. The situations are that sometimes, depending on where you're at, what part of the country you're at, it's the roads, the size of the roads and where you're going, and going down dirt roads, or maybe a road that may be not enough room for you to get down the road. How hard is it to drive, and how hard is it to maneuver and get around those places? You know, you find a lot of times that what happens is you think I can get down the road. Well, make sure you pretty well know what you're doing before you do that, or have some experience. Now, a good way to experience is to drive it in a big parking lot and test yourself, backing it in, pulling out. There's going to be circumstances you may find it's kind of hard. I found that when I was driving my RV, and even when I used to pull a camper, depending on the length, you have to really make your turns accordingly. You know, how I used to judge it is, I didn't make my turn until I got to where I knew my backside or my bumper was close enough that I could make the turn, and then I'd turn it, you know, kind of swing out just a little bit. A guy told me one time that in order to learn that, you have to take the time to drive down the road, to travel, and do that. But I learned in a big parking lot. This is what I did. I just hooked it up, and even when I had my Class A, I would drive it and understand what it is to maneuver around, because it was easier for me, honestly, to drive the Class A than it was for me to drive or pull something, because I found that it was just one box, even though it was larger, you know, 32, 33 feet. And it was okay for me to do that. It was not something, it was easy for me to drive, because they really drive really nice. I mean, mine drove really good. It was something that rode like I was riding. It was not a new one or anything, it was an older one. But it rode good. I had the flexibility, meaning the good steering. It had a pretty good turn radius on it. And I have gotten situations where I had to back up, and that's really hard. You have to have a backup camera or someone out there maneuvering you to help you back it up. And backing up, it could be backing up into a spot. It could be making sure that you don't hit something or run off the concrete pad or run into the septic system. And you do need some practice with that. But it's more like anything else. Also, something that you really have to think about, honestly, is when you pull into parking lots. Sometimes they'll have a curve because of the drainage of water. And that curve can matter how you turn into something. If you take the curve straight on, you're going to get the bump, and you're going to get the swiggle, woggle like this. If you take the curve, if you're coming into a curve and you take the curve on two wheels, so what I mean by that is, get your first wheel on it, and then the wheel on your left on it, and then wheel in that way, and you're going to keep from the big swagger. You're going to have a little swagger. I learned that a long time ago hauling cakes and pastries, so they don't knock them off the racks in the truck, because they would knock off the racks of the truck, and you had to pick up all those pastries, and there's always thousands and thousands of pastries. So if you maneuver, I found that most of my problems was I took it straight on when I'm turning in somewhere, or I'm making a left and I take it straight on. It's best if you can curve it just a little bit before you get in. Even you have to swing a little bit this way, and it does make it easier to pull in a parking lot. The right turns, the left turns can be challenging, especially if you turn left somewhere, because you're going to hit it straight on. You're going to get the bump. as you know, you got dishes and everything else in there. You got your whole life inside the van, so you really have to take your time. And a lot of times, if you have to stop completely and go over it easy, I would. Don't worry about anybody honking their horn or anything else behind you. As long as you're considerate, they'll understand that situation, because everything you own is in that RV. People don't realize that. So, and they forget because they're in a hurry. We're in a rush, and America is go, 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 go. But in driving it down the interstate, it's fine. Getting in the city can be complicated, especially if you have parallel parking or streets that have cars parked on the right or left, depending on where you're going, you know, because you have streets this one way and you're going to be going down those streets. It's like anything else. You just take your time. If you feel like that you can't make it and can't make a turn or can't make something like that, don't worry about it. If you have to loop it around, I've looped around many times, gone around the block many times, or actually went down to the next exit and turned back around to see and tried it on the other side because it was easier for me to do that. A lot of times they do work on the highways and they don't realize that, you know, it's wide enough for a tractor trailer. It should be wide enough for you. But being a newbie on the road, the best thing to do is take your time. Don't worry about anything else. Just pay attention. The key is this. Make sure your mirrors are always adjusted. Make sure you have a backup camera. Make sure you have the small, rounded, dotted things. It's a mirror that can actually show you the blind spots. It's a mirror, you put them on each side to show you the blind spots. So you have your big mirror, and then you have your mirror on the small mirrors that you can look at and make sure there's no car there. Because if you're in the left lane, you can look here, you can see. But if you're in the right lane and you want to get off, you want to make sure nobody's coming right here, because if somebody's coming, you don't want to hit them. So you want to make sure there's no motorcycles or cars or anything coming right to the right and trying to get around you, because a lot of times driving an RV, everybody's trying to get around you because they know you drive slow, and if you're pulling something, it's even slower a lot of times. So you really have to take your time. When you're driving an RV, the most important thing of anything that you do is to pay attention on everything you do. Always look right, left, and look at your backup camera, because there are a lot of things that you really don't see. Another thing you have to be aware of and be very careful of, if you're going down these side streets, you're going down streets, make sure you look for electrical wires and make sure you look for tree limbs, because those can really play havoc on your RV. I don't care if one scrapes the side of your RV, it can still puncture a hole inside of it and it can ruin your roof. I had an instance where I pulled down the street. The tree was overgrown. I guess apparently there's no trucks that have been down that road in a while. And here I come around down the street, and there's a big limb over the side of the road, and they had cut it off, but I had scraped the side of my RV and not realizing I was that close to that. So you really have to make sure you get good mirrors. If you have to buy other mirrors, buy other mirrors. Make sure they're always adjusted before you leave. Make sure you have a backup camera and a plan on where you're going to go and how you're going to do it. A lot of them give you signs, you know, like truck signs and this signs. For an example, if you're driving here in the Philippines with an RV or something that's big, you have to be very careful, because they're wheeling it out everywhere here, and it's tough to get around in an RV. I wouldn't want to drive one here. In US, I could drive one anywhere. I have had one in Boston. It was a nightmare. I had the most horrible experiences going down the small streets and things like that, but you can do it and you can get around. Best thing to do is stay out of the cities as much as you can. Park your RV outside the city, get a vehicle or bring a car with you and haul it around. But I did find that it was kind of hard for me to get around in some places, because it is a big vehicle. You are hauling something that's big, and you sure don't want to mess it up. You don't want a scratch on it. You don't want to tear on it or anything. So I want to thank everybody for always watching, and thank you so much for listening. And I'll see you guys next time.